Hi, everyone, and welcome to Deep Geek Live. And I am really pleased to introduce my guest tonight. I've been doing these live streams now for probably 6 months or so, and I have to say the live stream that has had the most views and the most likes has been the one that I did with my guest tonight. So absolutely no pressure, but LML, Lucifer means Lightbringer. Why don't you just say hi and introduce yourself?
We are the champions, my friend. Banana wow wow. Hey everyone, I'm obviously you understand what my costume is, right, Robert?
Yeah, it's probably the clearest thing ever.
Well, it's obviously Bran's future self as the new three-eyed raven, now grown with long blood raven-like hair, traveling in time to impersonate every character in the story.
Well, I hate to break it to you, my friend. You've still only got two eyes there.
Well, the third eye is a metaphorical eye, Robert. See, it's not an actual eye.
Well, you've already got me on the back foot. So why don't you just go ahead and say who you are and where people can find you on the net?
I am Lucifer Means Lightbringer. Most people call me LML. And you can find me at lucifermeanslightbringer.com. And you can find my YouTube channel on YouTube. It's called Lucifer Means Lightbringer. Very easy to find. And I've got all kinds of great theories about comets and mythology and green zombies and all kinds of good stuff. Lots of fun stuff on my channel. Right, Robert?
There is, and I say this a lot when I have people on. I only have people on whose content that I personally like and I recommend, and I would put LML right up there at the very top of the people that that I would recommend. His depth of knowledge and understanding about A Song of Ice and Fire and the mythology that informs that is right up there with anyone and probably exceeds anyone out there in the community. So I would highly recommend, the link is down there, by the way. I would highly recommend you go and check out his channel. I'll probably plug it again later, but let's start with talking about the subject we've got today, which is Bran. Now, what we're thinking about here is who he is, what it means to be a Greenseer, and what this implies about his role in the end game. What's happening for him? We're talking both books and show here. So at a sort of a general level, first of all, LML, what do we think about his overall character arc? Where has he come from, and where do you think he's going, without sort of getting too much into sort of the end game stuff?
Well, he's going right to the center of whatever shit is going down at the end of this book. I mean, that's the easy way to say it. Bran's journey from the beginning has been sort of separate and alone from everyone else, very much as a parallel to Daenerys, I would say, who's kind of separate from all the other characters and pursuing a kind of a more magical plot line than everybody else, really, Bran and Dany. And Bran is, I mean, everything that he's doing, I mean, he's the Greenseer. He's the new last Greenseer, or the new three-eyed raven, however you want to look at it. He's the one who's going to be taking up that mantle. It's obviously incredibly important. So whatever's going down at the end, I mean, Bran is right at the center of it just as much as Jon and Dany are, I would say.
I think I would agree with you completely there. So he and Stephen Stark, thank you very much for your super chat. We'll come to that, I think, in a moment.
Stephen Stark.
So he is the central, one of the central characters. There are 4 or 5 characters who, in the books, we focus on all the way through, and he is a very separate timeline. And I think what this means is that his storyline is important. There is no way that he's going to be a Rickon Shaggy Dog story. He is going to be central to wherever this goes. Now, I'm going to throw a few random questions at you now, LML, which are from my patrons. So let's go back to the start with Bran. And let's go back to this, the call that he had from Bloodraven, from the Three-Eyed Crow, however you conceptualize it. He had a visionary call to go north. And this also went to Jojen, and Jojen came looking for the chained wolf with wings. Now, I've done a video a long time ago about this idea that perhaps Rickon was actually who he was looking for. Do you think, first of all, that Bran is who Bloodraven, the three-eyed raven, three-eyed crow, however we name him, is Bran actually the person that Bloodraven wants up there?
So I actually do remember that live stream. I was hanging out in the chat. I don't know if you recall. There's a little bit of discussion of enormous unicorn goats from Skagos for about 45 minutes or so. Yeah, so I do remember it was a great live stream. In fact, one of my absolute favorites that you've ever done. Really, really, really was top notch. And I do like all the ideas that we entertained. And I would say that, well, first of all, I mean, my basic answer is no. It's definitely Bran. But at the same time, you guys made a really convincing case that there was something to that idea. And just the fact that he's so young and seems to be tapping into his skin changer powers at an early age is definitely interesting. But I do kind of wonder if you know how Bran is when he's in his dream, he's falling towards those ice spires, right? And there's all these other dreamers impaled on them. And it's supposed to be this idea that if Bran doesn't fly, he could end up impaled on those ice spires. So there's this moment of truth where he's got to fly or die, as the three-eyed crow to him says in the dream. And he obviously chooses to fly and he doesn't die. But you just have to wonder, like, are we going to see a depiction of that alternate path? What happens if you don't fly? You know, so we could see something like that with Euron, who's got that corrupted green seer symbolism. And of course, we're talking about book Euron here as opposed to show Euron. But Rickon is another one where you might see Rickon as almost like what could have happened to Bran if he didn't make it. Because Rickon's basically been almost abandoned. He's growing up with all these wild cannibals. His story could end in a potentially dark and or tragic way, just as it does in the show. So I do think Bran is the chosen one, the one that Bloodraven was looking for. But I also think that Rickon could be showing us like what happens if Bran doesn't make it.
Yeah, so my view for those who haven't seen those videos is that Bloodraven was casting his net wide. He was looking for he was looking for someone with the power. And he sent out this vision, this kind of dream quest to people all over the place. Now, we're going to come on to Euron in a moment. I've got a question from one of my patrons about Euron, but it seems that this was a vision that he gave to many people. Now, Rickon, as far as we can tell, is a green seer. He has got the power. All of the Stark seem to have some kind of skin changing power. They seem to have some kind of green seeing power, however developed that is. He definitely seemed to know about Ned Stark's death before Bran did, and he also has, as a kind of a hint, the green seers are said to have green eyes, and the only one of the wolves, the dire wolves, that has green eyes is Shaggy Dog, Rickon's dog. So I think there is a hint there that he is a powerful green seer. And when Jojen came up to Winterfell, he was looking not for a specific person. He didn't say, I'm looking for Bran. He was looking for the person in his vision, and the person in his vision was a chained wolf with wings. And at the time, one wolf was chained, and that was Shaggy Dog. And my view is that perhaps an alternate history or an alternate future was that Rickon was the one that he was going for. But let me put this one to you.
Actually, can I get my first LML interruption in right there?
Yeah, you can have as many LML interruptions as you'd like.
So I just want to pipe in to say that I think the idea that there's this hard delineation between skin changer and green seer is a little bit like there's too much made of that idea. I think that there is no hard line, and that basically to be a green seer is simply a skin changer that's powerful enough to skin change a tree, which is way different than any animals, because we're told that different animals are more challenging. Like dogs and wolves and crows are the easiest because they're smart and they're used to living with humans. But if you try to change other animals, it might be more of a challenge. And then you've got this idea that, well, skin changing a sentient tree, that's really tough. But if you look at the description of when Bran is skin changing the tree, it's Jojen says, like, it's just like going into your wolf, just go into the tree. So it's the same exact mechanism. It's just instead of a wolf, he's using a tree. So to me, this is a range of power and strength. And we know how Martin likes to do his magic. He doesn't like to sort it out into neat categories that you can make Magic University about and write the rules of it. He wants it to be weird and stuff. And that's why Rickon can have a vision of the future. And we're told about green seers and skin changers, but then we have Jojen, who isn't really either one. He just has, quote, green sight, which is like some smaller version of green seer power, but it's not exactly green seer power. So to me, this is all on a spectrum of magic, skin changer to green seer. So when you call Rickon a green seer and a skin changer kind of interchangeably, I actually agree with that and think that Rickon could be showing fledgling green seer abilities, or maybe if Rickon's life had gone differently, he could have become a green seer. And I also wonder what we'll see Jon do. Like, will Jon tap into the Weirwoods directly and not just go into Ghost? That's a question I have. So,
yeah, I'd agree with that. I think as an LML interruption, that was perfect. I would agree with everything there. So there is a sort of a linear progression. It's not just like a one or the other. You are either a skin changer or a green seer. You can be something a bit of the both. And for me, Bran clearly is both. And I think Rickon probably also is both. The question of Jon is that he clearly is a skin changer. In the books, it's made a lot less apparent on the show, but in the books he clearly is. And I think in the books we left him dying, and I think that he will warg into Ghost and show his skin changer abilities through that. But the question is he also a green seer? I don't know, but I think that the point is that Bran is the Stark that is taking that storyline to its natural conclusion rather than Jon.
Yeah.
Jon is taking on the more sort of fighty side of things. We can get onto the whole. Well, let's not get onto the whole Azor Ahai thing, because that will take us on a complete digression.
No, but you're right. Jon is going to be the wolf man. He's obviously he's a fighter, potentially a negotiator also, but usually you have to fight first before you can negotiate. Whereas Bran's involvement seems to be more magical. But so you got more patron questions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is bringing me on to another Patreon question from Wonder Dog, who says Euron seems to have been also called by Bloodraven. This is in the books. In the show, again, this is an underdeveloped storyline, but in the books, he also seems to have been called by Bloodraven. Why is Bran stronger? Will he end up mad as well? So this is building on this idea that when some of the language that Euron in the books uses clearly implies that he had the same vision that Bran had when he was there. Are you going to fly or not fly? That the same kind of questions that Euron plays with. And then when you look at the imagery that Euron as a man adopts about being one-eyed and a crow and all the rest of it, he takes such inspiration from this same place. So this is where my idea that, and it's not originally my idea, lots of other people have had this, is that Bloodraven was casting his net wide, looking for the next green seer, and one of the people that he was looking for, one of the people he contacted was Euron. Now, the question here, LML, is therefore, is Bran therefore stronger than Euron? He passed the test, as it were, or is it that Euron is also strong but in a slightly different way?
So we have no idea, first of all, it must be said, about Euron. And does he have green seer ability? What's going on with him? I mean, I agree the symbolism is all there, and I agree it's strongly implied that he's had some sort of crow dream, much like Bran has. But I think the difference with Euron is that Euron is corrupt. He wants to make himself a god. He's seeking after power for the sake of power and lust. And so he's giving us that quintessential dark version of the Lucifer or Prometheus figure who's reaching for the fire of the gods in order to become a god himself and to become an evil sort of overlord. And that's, if anybody's read the Forsaken chapter, the early release chapter from TWOW, that's got a bunch of really dark visions of Euron, you can see it. I mean, he's talking about the end and the apocalypse, and his face turns into like a Cthulhu thing or something. And so the difference between Bran and Euron is mostly that of choice, I think. When we talked about Bran's got to choose to fly or die, and he's falling towards those ice spires with impaled dreamers on them. Well, my original theory about that dream was that those are depictions of the others, meaning that the others are related to Green Seers and the Weirwood Net somehow. If you're familiar with the show canon, imagine the man who was turned into Night's King was perhaps a Green Seer. Just run with that hypothesis for a second. And so when we see these, when Bran sees impaled dreamers on spires of ice, it really makes you think of Green Seers who've been ice transformed. Because how did we see Night's King get created? He was impaled with dragon glass, which is frozen fire, which is kind of like a fire ice symbol. And we've also got Nis and Nissa getting stabbed with Lightbringer. So we've got all these ideas about a sword stabbing to create a magical transformation. So when I see these dreamers on ice spires, I think of the others, or I think of maybe corrupt Green Seers. And if Euron is a Green Seer potential candidate, then maybe he's represented by someone who's gone the way of ice, because his symbolism is a lot of others stuff going on. He's got the blue eye, and he's got a lot of double entendre word plays around him where he's leading the other ships and the other drowned men and other this and other that. And he's talking about bringing on the new long night in the apocalypse and stuff. So I did an episode called Moons of Ice and Fire 4, The Long Night Was His to Rule. And I broke down all of Euron's mythical symbolism in that episode. And I basically concluded that he seems to be tied to the others symbolically in the same way that Bloodraven is tied to the Night's Watch. You know, the Night's Watch, they swear their oaths to heart trees. All of them did before the Andals came. And so there's this idea that the Night's Watch are somehow swearing their vows to the Weirwoods and to the Green Seers. Brynden Rivers, Bloodraven, obviously used to be the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Now he's sitting down as the Three-Eyed Crow. The Night's Watch and Bloodraven have the same general goal, which is mitigating the others and their attack and winter coming on, unless you believe in evil Bloodraven, which I don't. So basically you can see the whole stack up where you've got Bloodraven and the Night's Watch. You've got Euron, and I think somehow he's going to end up being tied to the others. I'm not sure if it's just symbolism or if there will be a literal event that ties him. Like maybe somehow he triggers the invasion of the others through his use of magic. So it's sort of an incidental thing. But that's my not so quick take on Euron.
It's a good take, and I think I would agree with it. I think the Euron in the books, again, and in fact, I slightly going off on one. Euron is probably the character that I get most annoyed about on the show, simply because he is not
so different.
The same character
it's just so different.
as he is in the books. In the books, he is just so charismatic and apocalyptic, and everything he is trying to do is just a complete new game-changing plot, and that's nothing against the actor, against anything on the show. They've clearly just taken a decision not to go down that route, but he is so much more central to what's going on in the books. And let's just
I know there's some, hold on, Robert, that's the second LML interruption. I know that you
get three, mate. This is your second one. There you go for it.
3. Oh man, you didn't tell me that before I came on. So I know you do have some show watchers, and I'm thinking about them right now. So we need to tell them, okay, look, Euron in the books is nothing like the Euron in the show. In the books, Euron is drinking Shade of the Evening like all the time, which if you remember when Dany went to the House of the Undying, Robert, in the show, did they have her drink Shade of the Evening, or did she just sort of see visions in the House of the Undying? She drank something, right?
I think she did, but it wasn't a big thing.
So in any case, the warlocks from Karth have this drink called Shade of the Evening, and they make it from these black trees, which seem like inverses of the weirwoods. They're black trees with blue leaves instead of white trees with red leaves, and they're called Shade of the Evening trees. They make this psychedelic potion, which is very comparable to weirwood paste. And in the book, Dany has to drink the Shade of the Evening in order to see the visions in the House of the Undying. Now, Euron is quaffing this stuff like it's fucking wine or something. He's drinking it all the time. He's trying to serve it to Victarion, who's another Ironborn character that you don't know who it is if you're a show watcher. But the point is, this guy, Euron, is a tripper. He's wandering around on psychedelics all the time. He's got this dragon horn from Valyria, which is like this 8-foot black horn of a dragon turned into a musical horn. It's supposed to have the ability to bind dragons. And when somebody blows it, it's like this weird magical sound that burns everyone's ears, and it kills the person who blows the horn. He's got other artifacts from Valyria. So basically, this character is surrounded by magic, psychedelia, and these visions of the apocalypse. He appears to Aeron in dream visions by serving Aeron Shade of the Evening, and he depicts himself as a god with this Cthulhu-like face with all these tentacles, and he's talking about the bleeding star bespoke the end, and the apocalypse is coming, and I am your new god. And he's sitting on the Iron Throne with all the other gods of Westeros dead and like impaled on the spikes of the throne. So I mean, this is like a full-on big bad character, as much as you get in A Song of Ice and Fire. So if you've just watched him in the TV show and seen him as a murderous pirate with a sense of humor, it's just not quite the same thing. He is still a murderous pirate with a sense of humor in the books, but he's just a lot more. And I will just say, Robert, that I did like the actor Pillow Asbeck and the job that he did on the show for what it was. He played a good pirate with a sense of humor. It's just, for us book readers, it has to be disappointing because it's so far from Book Euron.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. So, two thoughts on Euron. The first is that I did a couple of videos on him, actually, if you're interested. He is trying to become a god. That is his aim. If you look at the pre-release chapter from the Winds of Winter, he's got two things he's trying to do. He's trying to capture a dragon, and he wants to become a god. He has got huge ambition about him. He's not just some lackey. So do go check that video out if you want. And secondly, this is sort of a plug, but I'm going to start at some point soon a series of videos on book characters that aren't on the show, and just like a 5-minute, 10-minute version on each of them. And I'm probably going to include people like Euron as well, is that people who are so different in the books. Just if you're just a show only person, just what's the short version of who these people are and why they're different, and why it is that book people get so worked up about Lady Stoneheart or Euron or Fagon or whoever it is, because there are so many of these characters that are so important in the books. And I'm going to be doing a series of videos, short videos on each of these characters, just explaining why they're important in the books and why taking them out of the show has changed what is happening in the show. That's not to say the show is wrong or bad. It's just that it's the decision that they've made editorially to take those characters out, and that will have an impact. But that's all by the by, because the question, to return, it took us about 15 minutes to get here. But LML, the question from Wonder Dog was, does this mean that Bran is stronger than Euron? If they both had the same vision, which I think we probably agree that they did, they had the same vision from Bloodraven,
I
the
have a comment
flying
about that, but
vision
go
and all
ahead.
the rest of it. If they did, and Bran was the one that was called, does that mean that Bran was the stronger Greenseer than Euron?
Yes. I mean, Bran is the strongest Greenseer that's probably ever lived, and I don't think anyone's stronger than him, with the exception of uh, the fact that he hasn't come into his full powers yet. And so when we see him in the show, for example, confronting Night's King on the astral plane, Night's King is stronger right now. But Bran ultimately will have to be strong enough to, to win. So I think all indications are that Bran will be the strongest. It's just that he's a boy and he's learning his powers. He hasn't had time to become 130 and, a full veteran of the Greenseer net. He's just like a kid, with trauma, who was abandoned, and stuff. And he's he's got broken legs and shit. And he's trying to figure out how to do stuff. So that's the limit with Bran. His power is unlimited, basically. I think it's just a matter of wisdom, the choices he makes, things like that. And that's what Martin has been showing us with his whole arc, is he's making these choices that are kind of dark and arguably immoral, like taking over Hodor. He's eating the flesh of people while in wolves and in his own body, and breaking all these rules. So
Yeah, so let's move on to that one, and just quickly to say, Wassa30 saying, I'm in Guatemala and can't send a super chat, but went to London for a meeting last week and have a whole new appreciation for your being awake so late. You're very welcome. I'm very happy to stay. I am a bit of a night owl anyway, so it's not a problem. But moving on to the question of Bran with his slightly morally grey position on some of these things. We have these rules that there appear to be for skin changes. We had a whole chapter at the beginning of Dance with Dragons, I think it was, where we see Varamir talking about the rules of skin changes, and one of them, or two of them, Bran has broken. About eating the flesh of humans whilst warging, and secondly, skin changing into humans. Does this mean, at a very basic moral level, that Bran is a bad guy? And secondly, perhaps slightly more subtly, or more importantly, what impact will it have, do you think, on him as a character? The fact that he has broken these rules of skin changing, the things that you shouldn't do when you're taking over the body of a wolf.
So if you recall on your Rickon Stark live stream, I was typing in a question and a comment, and I was pointing out that Rickon could go really dark, because he and I compared him to Varamir, the story of Varamir killing his brother. When Varamir was maybe 6, it seems like, he seems to have killed his 2-year-old brother by skin changing one of the family dogs. And you get the idea. If you think about a 6-year-old, okay, 6-year-olds don't know how to control their temper. And they do, like, if another kid takes their toy, they might just take a toy and throw it at the other kid. Now, they might know that's wrong, but kids don't know how to regulate their emotions, and so they do stuff like that. And so if you give a 6-year-old kid, an angry 6-year-old kid, the power to skin change, something like this would absolutely happen sometimes. You'd have a child using his childlike rage, but instead of throwing a toy, they'd accidentally jump into the dog and bite the 2-year-old. And so I think that Rickon is a comparable case. He's been abandoned by his family, through circumstance. He's growing up with one wildling who, is pretty cool. Asha's pretty cool. But, he's on Skagos and he's on the run, and there's who knows what kind of trauma is being inflicted upon him. So that could go pretty dark. And I also compared Bran's the scene at Queen. Okay, we got some super chats coming. Stan Rixian, $15, sending in support before she heads out. Thank you very much, Stan Rixian. Hand of the Dragon. That's my Hand of the Dragon right there. And Steven Stark with another $2 saying hit the like button. And of course, Azor Hype is in the chat, and it's his birthday. So happy birthday, Kyle. So anyways, there's the scene at Queen's Crown, right, where John's with the wildlings. And I guess for you show watchers, let me sort of summarize. He's with the wildlings. They've snuck back over the wall. And if you remember, he was with the wildlings that were going towards Castle Black, and he's looking for a chance to escape. So in the books, this happens at a place called Queen's Crown. And Queen's Crown is a tower in the middle of a lake. And Bran and Hodor and Jojen and Mira and everybody are up in this tower. Bran's wolf Summer is not in the tower. The wolf is out hunting. And what happens is that John's wildling party rolls up to the tower while Bran and all of them are up inside. And so they hush down and they get real quiet because they're hoping the wildlings won't notice them. They don't know John's there. But eventually, Bran figures out what's going on. He figures out that it's John and he's with the wildlings. And so Bran essentially wargs into Summer and sends Summer into this lightning rainstorm to attack the wildlings so that John can help escape and break free, which he does. And it's a terrifying scene. The wolf is like blood dripping from its fangs, and you can only see it during the flash of the lightning, and it's tearing people's throats out. It's absolutely terrifying. And this is one little crippled boy in a tower with one wolf, and he's just raining terror on this small little force. And so when you read the histories of A Song of Ice and Fire, you read about the Warg King, and you read about the Marsh King, and these ancient Starks who were probably wargs. And you get the idea of green seers, multiple green seers, who aren't crippled little children who don't know their powers, but rather walking, able-bodied people who are powerful green seers, commanding armies of wolves and flocks of ravens. This is what we're told. This is a terrifying thing. So this entire thing, and I'm circling back to your specific question, but this entire thing of skin changing and green seeing, it is terrible. It is just before you break any rules. I mean, it's a terrible, awful, frightful thing, which can go wrong really easily, just like all power can. So then you have Bran. He's a child. He doesn't know right from wrong in the same way that an adult does. And he doesn't understand exactly what he's doing when he takes over Hodor. He kind of does. He knows that Hodor is uncomfortable, and it says that Hodor goes away into a little pit in the little corner of himself while Bran takes him over. But again, you can't hold a 7 or 8-year-old boy morally accountable in the same way that you can an adult, especially when he's got magic powers that he doesn't understand. So Bran is in this really interesting position where he is doing morally gray or even black things, but they're not the same kind of decisions that someone like Euron is making, where he's an adult willingly embracing evil for his own gain. Bran is a crippled boy who just wants to walk around. It's you can sympathize with that, but it leads him. Go ahead.
No, I think I just want to agree with all of that. I think that Bran, yes, has broken the rules of being a skin changer. We have to accept the fact no one has told him the rules of being a skin changer. He is just there trying to figure it out as he goes along. And he is, and I find it hard to always figure out exactly what the ages of all the kids are. But when he started, he was 6, I think. And he's probably now, like 9, 10, I don't know, something along those lines. He's not even a teenager in this world, so he is like just trying to survive. So yes, when we're talking about are these things going to have an impact on him, of course they will. He's a scared boy whose parents have been killed, who has suddenly been taken north to a place that he never thought he would ever go by people he'd never met before, and he's discovering powers that he didn't know he had, and he's doing some kind of magical connection with a tree wizard that he didn't know about at all before. He is scared and he is trying to survive, and I think that is the thing we need to understand about Bran and who he is. Yes, he has done some things. I think what he did with Hodor, as you say, morally grey, heading towards morally black. It was not good. Taking over somebody else's brain and using them and taking their body for a walk is just that's wrong on many levels. So we should just be open and upfront about that. But at the same time, he is a child. He is the product of all the inputs that have happened to him, and the inputs that have happened to him overwhelmingly since he left Winterfell have not been positive. I just want to very quickly pick up on all these super chats that have been coming through. So thank you so much, guys. Johnson Baptiste, thank you, $10. Guys, Johnson Baptiste is one of my patrons, and he's also got a channel of his own. So do please, if you're interested in music and the not just like listening to music, but thinking about music and the impact it has, then do go and check out his channel. If you just go to YouTube and search for John St. Baptiste, that's how you'll find him. We also had a couple more earlier. One from Sanrixian, LML said, sending in support. Thank you so much. That's really kind. $15. That's really good. Thank you so much. And Stephen Stark, your second super chat, saying hit that like button. Thank you. Your first question about will Book Bran ever leave the cave? I want to pick up in the second half of this, which is when we're going to be looking at the future of Bran. So at the moment, we're still looking at Bran's journey to where he's got at the moment. So we'll pick up on that one in the second half, if that's okay. Let's just pick up on, I think, the final question that I had coming into this from my patrons, which is from Yensid, which is about Bloodraven. And the question is or was Bloodraven even Bloodraven by the time Bran got to him, and not simply a manifestation or projection of the personage Bloodraven had been before being absorbed into the collective consciousness?
It's a good question.
So this is the question here is, and I have views on this, so I'll come to them after you, if that's okay. LML, is the person who has been talking to Bran, and when Bran gets up there, who talks to Bran, is that still Bloodraven, or is that the Weirwood network, as it were?
So that's a great question, and it's somewhat ambiguous. I do think that there is enough to know that there is some Bloodraven left, because he talks about a brother that he loved and a brother that he hated. And to me, that doesn't seem realistic, that this is like fake Bloodraven. It's the Weirwood net like pretending to be Bloodraven and acting like he's recalling his memories of a brother that he hated and loved, which are human emotions. I buy that as the last vestige of Bloodraven's humanity that can still remember some of those things. And you might even speculate about Bloodraven traveling back in the past to visit Shara Seastar and just look at her in a garden somewhere. You know, I mean, I could see that happening. But at the same time, there's no question that Bloodraven has been merging with the godhood of the Weirwood net for many years. And at this point, his physical body is wired into the trees. It cannot live apart from the trees. He doesn't need to eat. He's sustained by the roots themselves. So he's at least like 50% in there. And when he's out there talking to Bran, he can only do it for a little while. And then he says, oh, the trees are calling me. I really got to go. So you get the idea that like it takes effort for him to inhabit his body. And after a while, he's like, I need, you know, I'm tired. I got to go back into the Weirwood net and like charge up. So he's at least partially joined in. And of course, the show, if you're talking about show canon, they can play with that on a continuum however they want to. And we see that young Bran in the show, who's now left the cave, he's kind of permanently hooked into the net too. So I don't think, to answer the question, I think yes, it is some Bloodraven, but it's ambiguous as to how much. And certainly he's very much part of that hive mind. He just like hasn't fully joined it yet. That's I feel like he's got 1 foot in and 1 foot out. What do you think?
Yeah, annoyingly, I agree with you again. He is still him. He is in the process, a long, drawn-out process of being subsumed within the hive mind, but he is still who he is. He does clearly talk about what his past is. When he first got hooked up, he clearly was trying to make connections with his family. And when he's talking to Bran, it's clear that he remembers stuff, but he doesn't immediately make the connections. And so he talks about, and this is the point at which many people go off on slight speculative tangents. It has to be said, when Bran says, "Are you the three-eyed crow?" When he goes, "Oh yes, I was a crow once." This is him remembering his past life, and he does remember his past life. He does remember who he is, but he is becoming part of the Weirwood network. So yes, the answer is that he is still him, but he's not completely still him. And I think this seems to be what happens to all the people who are hooked up to the Weirwood Tree network. If you read the books, you find that Bran goes out through Hodor and he explores the cave network, the Bloodraven cave network, the Three-Eyed Crows cave network, and he goes through that and he sees lots of children of the forest hooked up to it, and they seem almost dead but still slightly alive. They just, like, their eyes flicker towards him and things like this. And this seems to be a hint that most of who they are has been sucked up to be part of the Weirwood network, but a little bit of them still remains. A little bit of who they are is still looking out to see what's going on. And just kind of quickly flick across to a couple of super chats. NYNTY5, thank you very much, saying, I will be back. Aluminium taco. Now, this is quite random for those who don't know.
Wait, what kind of taco?
Aluminium. So this is
it's what now?
Aluminium. You would know it as aluminum.
Is that like adamantium?
So this was something in my previous, I think it was probably my last live stream. People seem to love the way I say the word taco. Apparently I say it in a very different and bizarre way.
Yeah, it's really weird. Yeah, taco. Yeah, like tacky.
Thanks, I love it. And also aluminium, which obviously I say it in the right way and everyone else says in the incorrect way. So thank you very much for that, NYNTY5. And we also had a super chat from Angelina Ahai. Thank you so much, with some real money, £19.99. Thank you so much. No question, just sending support. England for the win on Saturday, 2-1 against Sweden. I'll take 2-0. I have to say I'm getting excited and well up for it. Don't get me down the World Cup route, because I will talk for a long time about the wonder of Harry Kane.
Yeah, so I get a free interruption when you bring up the World Cup, actually. And there's a great question coming in from some people in the chat that I'd like to read before we go any further, because I'm afraid I want to get it while they're still here. Is that all right with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
It doesn't. It's kind of neither here nor there. It's not going to really belong anywhere. It's from Skyline R32 and Misty, I believe it is. I'm scrolling back up in the chat, but basically the question was about Dany. Is there a chance that Dany is a green seer, or that she has some, because she's got about like 25% approximately Blackwood heritage, from Black Beth of Blackwood, who married Egg and then had children that had incest for 3 generations. So Dany is a quarter Blackwood. Is it possible those green seer genes are what enabled her to hatch the dragons, to bond with the dragons, maybe even her horse, who she has almost an instant amazing connection with? And so this is kind of a wild question, but it's not crazy. And I like it because I will say this much. Dany has a ton of green seer symbolism going on. And I am trying to figure out how literal it is. I'm going to do a whole episode about this, so I'm not going to go off on a 10-minute tangent. But I will just say that she's wandering around in the Dothraki Sea and eating green berries that make her trip. And I guess you don't even. There's a whole green seer wordplay thing going on. But essentially, Dany does have a lot of green seer symbolism. And so it could be that George is telling us that, for example, the Dragon Bond is a mutated form of Green Seer magic. He said that they're different now, but it's possible that there was some ancient connection. And so that's why he's showing us the dragon person, Danny, with these Green Seer hints. Or it could be that Danny is symbolizing one of those ancient archetypal characters like I like to talk about. Danny is Azor Ahai reborn in many ways. And I absolutely 100% believe that Azor Ahai, the original, was definitely a Green Seer. And I've done a lot of episodes about that, but I'm as sure of that as anything else, Robert, that Azor Ahai was a Green Seer. And that's why we see Beric Dondarrion walking around with a Lightbringer sword, running on fire magic, but with one eye like Bloodraven, sitting in a Weirwood throne in a Weirwood cave like Bloodraven. He's basically a combination of Bloodraven and Azor Ahai, and that's because the original Azor Ahai was a Bloodraven person, a Green Seer. And so I've completely forgot about what question we were answering now. Where were we? Just remind me. And
but
Danny. So that you kind of get the point. Like Danny is symbolizing Azor Ahai in many ways. So all of her Green Seer clues could really be about Azor Ahai, or it could be that he wants to tell us that the dragon people are related to Green Seers, or it could be just what this person is suggesting, that her Blackwood blood is contributing to this mix of magical blood that enables her to wake the dragons. Like, why was she the first Targaryen in 200 years that was able to wake dragons? Well, she just got a fresh infusion of Dane blood and Blackwood blood. And those are two of the most magical houses in the story. So just from a general sense, I look at the fact that the last two infusions were Blackwood and Dane to the Targaryen bloodline, and I'm just wondering, like, is that an accident? Could that really be a totally benign coincidence? Or are we supposed to factor in these two bloodlines that seem to be magical when we think about Dany? So what do you think about that?
Well, I'm a complete subscriber to the tinfoil theory. In fact, I should probably say the only tinfoil theory that I always subscribe to is that Bloodraven rules everything. And my general view is that Bloodraven influenced the Targaryen family tree to ensure that Blackwood blood, and when we say Blackwood blood, we're really meaning First Men blood. This is a sort of a magical blood going down the ages, is powerful within the Targaryen rule for the three generations. Now, you said that Dany is a quarter Blackwood. I would dispute that perhaps she's even a half Blackwood.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, you're right. Yeah.
So my view is that all of those people, including we get Rhaegar, incidentally, are half Blackwood. So they've got a lot of First Men blood coming down into them. Now, on the specific question about whether that means that Dany is skin changing into Drogon, I personally think no. I think she's using her Targaryen blood there. I think that is that bit of her magic, which is to bond with the dragons, because dragons are magical creatures. I think that is a different type of magic that she is using there. But I think that the reason why the Targaryens, or why Bloodraven wanted the Targaryens to have this First Men blood running through their veins is because he believed that the prince that was promised, Azor Ahai, as you said, has to have some First Men blood, some skin changer / green seer blood within them. And so this means, unhelpfully, that both of the two prime candidates for being Azor Ahai, Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen, both have got this Blackwood blood within them, this First Men blood within them. So I don't think that Dany is using that to skin change to warg into Drogon. The whole language that is used there seems to be very different.
Yes, it is.
But the genetic manipulation seems to have been going on to try and ensure that the defender of humanity against the others has got First Men blood within them.
Yeah, and a related idea would be Azor Ahai as an Easterner coming to Westeros, having a child that then is the last hero with Dragonsteel. And now that child would be the person with both First Men, Skin Changer blood, and Dragon blood, because the symbolism with Azor Ahai just repeats onto his child. And so it's impossible to say if Azor Ahai reborn means the child of Azor Ahai or a transformed Azor Ahai. We see both examples in the books where Jon is Azor Ahai reborn as a child, whereas someone like Beric shows us an Azor Ahai that's reborn through a death fiery transformation. So there's, it could go either way. But the point is, yeah, we both agree that if it's just a general thing, like we got all this Azor Ahai Lightbringer crap, it's from a Shai. But if it doesn't have some connection to Westeros, then what's the bloody point of bringing it up so much throughout all the books? And it seems obvious that there's a collision course with Dany and the dragons and all this fire magic and the others and everything in the north, and the Green Seers are kind of right in the middle of that. So the idea that original Azor Ahai was a Green Seer or had some connection to the Weirwood Net, it's really, it's logical, actually.
Absolutely. And Yensid, this was your question on my Patreon, and I'm going to take that as a big thumbs up that we covered it when you've given us a super chat saying I pay by the tangent. Thank you so much. That's very generous. So
well,
that was a big
I'm your man, let me tell you. So just real quick, let me just say, I hope you guys, Misty and Laura, I hope that's and everybody that was asking about Dany and the Green Seers, I hope you are well satisfied. Absolutely. With our tangents.
So that's the first half of this live stream. And can I kind of bring that a bit to a close in terms of where Bran has come from and who he is as a person, what it means to be a Green Seer. I'm just going to take a moment just to give a couple of messages over to my patrons about things that are coming up. If you've not picked up on it, I've mentioned it a lot of times, so you probably have already. My new channel called The Well Told Tale will be launching on the 18th of July. That's just a couple of weeks away now. So it's going to be a channel devoted to me just reading the best science fiction, fantasy, speculative fiction stories ever. So I'm going to start with the War of the Worlds. We're going to move on to Frankenstein, and from there we're just going to go to the other absolute classics books that you either love or you just know you should have read at some point. So it's just going to be me narrating them. It's going to be long form. Each episode is going to be at least half an hour. I'm looking into getting a podcast going with this as well. No adverts in the middle to disrupt it, so it's just going to be just the audio. It's something people have been asking me to do for a long time, and I'm really excited about it. So it's going to be launching on the 18th of July in a couple of weeks' time. If you're a patron, if you're a supporter of the channel, and you want to help out the launch by getting me better audio gear or more of a push in terms of launching it, then please do check out the GoFundMe page, which is down there in the links below. And if you've not subscribed and you want to know about it, again, it's down there in the description. The other things I just wanted to say in terms of where I'm going forward with this channel, I spent a lot of time focusing in on Westworld. Now that's finished, I want to focus a lot more down onto Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire for the next few months. I've got a few new series that I'm starting up. I'm going to carry on with the Traveler's Guide, which I know a lot of people love. And I'm also going to start up a series, which I did the first one of quite recently, which is questions that people still have about A Song of Ice and Fire. This is questions that fans still have that nagging at the back of your brain, not just like newbie questions, but questions that you have that you just really want the answers to. So the first one I did was, are Sansa and Tyrion still married? I put that one up last week or a couple of days ago, and I'm going to come up with a few more questions. The next one is going to be, can White Walkers cross running water? That's the next one I'm going to be doing, and I'm going to be doing the nagging questions one a week from now for the next while, and also book characters that aren't in the show. I mentioned it a moment ago. Those are the things that I'm going to be doing coming forward. Patrons, I just want to say again, thank you. I say it every time. I cannot do this without you. So thank you so much for your support. If you enjoy the channel, if you want to support the channel, please do check out my Patreon page. It's the link is down below. It's patreon.com/InDeepGeek. It's a way to support the channel and also a way to get access to more of my content. So please do check that out. But LML, if you're there, where can people find you, and what can people look forward to on your channel?
So lucifermeanslightbringer.com is my channel. Main thing I want to tell people is, if you have not listened to my podcasts and you don't know, you've only heard me talk here and there about my main theory, there's one video that you need to watch, and it's right at the top of lucifermeanslightbringer.com. And it's a 50-minute that I did at Con of Thrones this year. It's just my basic overall theory, and it's sort of an updated version of the general summary of my theory. So basically that's the video to watch to sort of get your feet wet and see what I'm all about. And if you watch that video and find any of it interesting, then you will definitely like the podcast. It's all about mythical symbolism, and it traces some of the external mythology that's in the series. References that George makes to Mithras and North mythology, in Egyptian mythology, and Mesoamerican mythology, and Chinese mythology. But the thing is that it's not just nerding out and going, oh, look, I'm a smart mythology guy and I can spot Odin symbolism here. It's actually showing how Martin is using these mythical symbols and their implications to build his characters, to build the universe. And actually, it starts to show you where the characters are going. Like, for example, I've done 3 or 4 episodes just on Odin and Bloodraven and Yggdrasil and Bran. And understanding Odin and Yggdrasil is so important to understanding Bran and the Weirwoods and Bloodraven. And you can get the basics of the Weirwood-Greenseer relationship just by reading the books. But by diving into the Norse mythology parallels, you can just really understand it in a big way. Because what George is doing is he considers himself to be writing inside the context of all the great mythology and literature that's come before him. So when he makes a magic tree and a magician that hooks up to the magic tree, he's well aware that he's not the first guy to think of the idea of people bonding with trees and becoming magicians. And so he kind of wants you, I feel like, to understand the context and the history of world trees and tree magicians and tree humans and all that stuff. And so he's basically building upon all that lore with his own version of it. And so I feel like A Song of Ice and Fire is almost like a treasure box or a time capsule of great literature and mythology. And my podcast is essentially dedicated to looking at A Song of Ice and Fire through that lens. And yeah, there you go. That's my plug.
And it's a good plug. And I'm going to back that one up by saying that a lot of the channels that you will find on YouTube and the podcasts, we tread the same ground a lot of the time. I will be open about it. I try my best to come at things from different angles, but the person who I think comes at things from the most different angle is the wrong way of saying it, but the most original way of looking at things is the man that I've got on today, LML. His podcast really is essential viewing if you want to have an idea, or essential listening if you want to have an idea about the bigger picture of what is going on with Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire. So I would highly recommend if you go and check out that, I think it's about 30 minutes, that intro pitch as to what his theory is. It's on the YouTube channel, so go and have a check out of that. It's well worth having a look. But in the meantime, we've had a Another super chat from Stephen Stark, simply saying flaming moon meteors, which probably sums up a lot of that theory. And as I say, I would highly recommend you go and have a look at it. But what I would like to do is move on in this second half of the live stream to the future for Bran. I think Bran is one of the most enigmatic characters within A Song of Ice and Fire, in as much as we know his storyline up to where it is.
Can I get an interruption for a user comment in the chat
I
here?
think this is number 4, but all right, go on.
Yeah, it's good. No, I got a free one. This would be number 3, but I'm going to call this a free one too. So when I listened to LML's Bloodstone Compendium, my head exploded and 1,000 dragons came out. Angelina Ahai says. So that's someone who gets it. Good look.
Yes, I'll let you have that one as a freebie. I think where I want to go with this second half is thinking about where Bran is going next, because we know that he's on this huge journey to become this incredibly powerful tree wizard. Effectively, he has moved from being just a Stark child to having his powers awakened, and then he's gone up both in the books and on the show to train to become this amazingly powerful green seer. So the question is, what on earth is his role in the end game? We've got 2 books to go, we've got 1 series of the show to go, and on the show I have to say I'm slightly underwhelmed, because what he seems to be is just like this understanding what's going on to help us know what's happened in the past, and to do a few slightly freaky things with knowing what's happening with Littlefinger and quoting stuff back at him and all the rest of it. He hasn't yet shown his full powers, but I am convinced that he has got a central role in what is going to happen in the end game of both the book and the show. So when we were talking a little bit before this, LML, you had a couple of broad theories that I think let's structure this around those 2 theories, if that's okay. The first was this idea, which I've heard a lot of times from a lot of people, is that maybe Bran is going to be a dragon rider. When we get this mentioned again and again, that the three-eyed raven, blood raven, says to him, you're not going to walk again, but you will fly. People interpret that as being the fact that he is going to either be a dragon rider or he's going to warg somehow into one of the dragons. Do you think that that is his fate?
So I can say that I think it's possible. I wouldn't call it likely, and I wouldn't bet on it happening, but I'd put the odds at more than 5 or 10%. I think it's a decent, credible chance that Bran will have to skin change a dragon. However, if he does that, I think it's likely to be a suicide mission that he has to do for the greater good. And it's actually almost a version of the Bran cauldron theory, which is one of the other ones we're going to talk about, that he would have to skin change a dragon in order to save the day or do something heroic. But there's a bunch of times in the book when either Jon or Bran are trying to skin change their wolf, or Varamir too. And there's several examples of fire driving skin changers out of their body, and pain does it too. And the pain is usually described as fire. Like one time Jon tries to get into his wolf after the wolf has taken an injury, and he has to hop right back out. He said it's like touching a hot stove. So if you think about dragons being fire-made flesh, they're not regular animals. They are magical in some sense. We don't know if they're created by sorcerers or if they're just natural magical animals that exist in Westeros or in Planetos, because Planetos is a magical planet. But the dragons are magical, and they're fire-made flesh. So for a skin changer or green seer to try to inhabit a dragon would be like trying to skin change fire itself. So it may be impossible. It may be, again, a suicidal act that is possible, but it consumes you as you do it. It may lead to some sort of freaky transformation where he's burned up and merges with the dragon or something, and can't get back out. Or it could be that he tries it and it's like touching the hot stove and he can't. And so it'll just be this thing that like somebody tries to do but can't. And then the last thing I'll say about it is that, or at least in this first volley, because I've got some quotes about this. If you talk about the show, we have a frozen dead dragon that I don't think any Targaryens can ride anymore, right? Like Jon or Dany couldn't ride Ice Viserion at this point. But maybe the way that we get it back from the Night King is that Bran can snatch it or invade its mind and fight it or crash it or something. You know what I mean? Drive the Night King away from it, something like that. Because we've seen Bran and Night King interact in the, you know, the ether, the astral plane, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I'd add to that, and I'm looking forward to your second volley in terms of quotes, is that when I think of the magic that Bran is learning, this is the magic of the children of the forest. This is the magic of nature. It's the magic of water. It's the magic of wood. It's the magic of wind. It's the magic of natural things. What is not is the magic of fire. Fire has always been the enemy of the children of the forest, and that is, I think, quite a deliberate thing. So ice is just like almost the opposite of water, so the magic of the others is deliberately sort of the opposite, the mirror image of what's going on. But fire is the enemy of wood. And we hear again and again about when people are burning down trees, and this is a bad thing from the children of the forest perspective. So I think that magic is completely separate to the magic of the children of the forest, which is the magic that Bran is learning. I'm gonna
no, you can't. See, here's the thing. You know, these really shouldn't count as interruptions, because what you do is you say something really interesting and then you try to move on without letting me respond to the interesting thing that you said, and I've got to go
yeah,
but
I'm
really,
like that.
well, all I want to do is comment on the great things that you said. So, and now I've lost my train of thought because I went and explained all that. What were you just saying, Robert?
Well, what I was talking about was the fact that fire is the enemy of wood, and ice is the mirror of water.
Okay, so we know that in book or in show canon, the children of the forest created the White Walkers. All right. And I've suggested that it's possible the guy that was turned into Night's King is going to be revealed as a green seer, because he was tied up to a weirwood tree. It's like, was that just a random prop? Like, that's just a good place to stab him? Or was that weirwood tree like actually important and part of what was going on there? And in the book canon, there's also going to be some sort of connection between the green seers, the children of the forest, and the others. But the thing is, Robert, is that it's a transformation. Like if you use green seer magic to create others or become an other or something, you can't then go back to regular green seeing. Like the Night's King raises the dead, and a lot of people have suggested that this is like just his version of skin changing. So instead of skin changing live animals, he's skin changing the dead. So it almost seems like he's taken his green seer powers and they've been translated into a language of ice and death. And so it's possible that there could be a similar connection between fire magic and green seers. But again, if you use your green seer magic to play with fire, which is an element of nature, you have to transform yourself to do it. Because look at Melisandre. Melisandre is transforming herself in order to be able to see through the fire. She says that soon she won't need to eat or sleep at all. Right now, she barely needs to sleep. She only eats to keep up appearances so people don't think it's like super weird. But eventually, she hopes that she won't need to sleep at all. And when she has the fire vision, she talks about it transforming her. And so she's turning into a person that runs on fire magic. But she didn't die like Beric and get resurrected. At least we're not given any clues that she has. The clues show us that she's transforming gradually. And so I think there is a way that you can transform into a fire being or an ice being. And I think that Night's Queen, Robert, I don't know if you've seen this video of mine, but I posit that Night's Queen, and this is actually Duran Duran's idea, a friend of mine, that Night's Queen is basically similar to Melisandre, just an icy version instead of a fiery version. And so I'll wrap it up and give it back to you. But the point is, you've got fire magic and ice magic and green seer magic. We've already been shown there's a link between ice magic and green seer magic, but it's a transformational connection. It's not interchangeable. You don't have green seers controlling others, right? You've got, there's some sort of like the green seer magic created the ice magic or used it somehow. So.
Okay, so there's so much.
Okay,
I mean, I have to say quickly, Yen said, thank you for the super chat. Pay the toll. Love this train of thought. We're going to go down this for a couple more minutes because I can't resist. In my understanding of things, we have the natural magic, the children of the forest magic, which is about water, life, and wood, and wind, and things like that. And then on either side of it, we have these two different conflicting forces, the forces of ice and fire. Now, and that seems to be the way that the books have been set up. George R.R. Martin has been talking all the time about this idea based on Robert Frost's poem about both ice and fire could destroy the world. Both of them have this power. The thing in the middle is the children of the forest's magic. Now, what we have with ice, which is the kind of the mirror of the children of the forest's powers, and I think that is a deliberate thing because I think that it's not going to be exactly the same in the books as it was on the show, but I think that clearly the others have come from the children of the forest's magic in some way, shape, or form as a mirror of that. And so what we've got is, whereas water is with the children of the forest, we have ice with the others, with the White Walkers, and that is what is going on there. And on the other side, we have fire, and fire can also destroy the magic in the middle, the people in the middle, the sort of the nature in the middle. So what I see with Melisandre is not somebody who is kept alive with fire. I see someone who is being consumed inside by fire. I've done a whole video.
Well, no, both. I'm saying her humanity is being consumed. She's turning into a being that subsists on fire magic.
I think she has turned into a being, and this is my interruption on you. I think she has turned into a being. I've done a video on this if you want to check it out, called something like What's Going On with Melisandre. I think she is a fire white. I think all the clues are there that she is already a fire white, in the same way that Beric Dondarrion is, in the same way that Jon Snow perhaps will become in the books and on the show, although they've not gone down the fire whites route on the show. So that is where.
So that's actually a great point when you bring up Jon Snow. So you talked about the green seer magic in the middle, ice and fire on the sides. We know that green seers are connected to the others, but then why do we have Bloodraven, the main green seer character in the books, who's the blood of the dragon person? And why is Jon, the special prince, a mix of dragon blood and Stark blood? And like you said, why did George put Blackwood green seer blood in Dany's bloodline? There is clearly something going on with the mixing of the blood of the dragon and green seer or skin changer blood that is important. So there are connections from green seer magic to each extreme opposite of fire and ice. All I'm saying is that there's always transformations in between. It's not, they're definitely separate, but we're given clues that they can affect each other or create each other or something like that.
Yeah, and at the risk of bringing us back to a moment where we agree with each other, I think that in order for, and this is where the Bloodraven and the Blackwood magic combining with the Targaryen, the fire magic comes in, is that this is what is required in order to oppose the ice magic. the combination of these two in order to oppose it. Now, the Bloodraven, I think, has been trying to ensure that we get a hero of the living, although that's probably not the right way of putting it, because I think it's not just going to be the living. There's a lot of undead going on, but the hero of the living is going to be somebody who is both earth magic, children of the forest magic, and fire magic, and that is potentially both John and Danny. And I think where this comes into is if we're kind of bringing this all to the fundamental endpoint, the world.
No, you're doing that thing again where you said something interesting and then moved on. I got a quote for you.
I'm gonna power on with this one. You can come back on this point if you want, but where the end point has to be for this is that we cannot end with ice being in control of everything. We cannot end with fire being in control of everything. We cannot end, I think, fundamentally with the old gods being in control of everything. We have to end with humanity being in control of everything. And that is where the story, certainly in the books, seems to be heading. And so where I am interested in getting to is there are different videos about how the dragons are going to end, because I think the dragons will end in some way, shape, or form, whether that's them dying or them going off. There's another video somewhere about how how the others are going to end, about how they're going to be turned back. I think that is going to happen. But when we were talking beforehand, you talked about this idea of the cauldron, and I wrote down here Bran the Destroyer, about Bran taking down the Weirwood network. Now, I know there was something you wanted to come back on a moment ago, but
yeah, you're dreadful. You really are. So all I'm trying to do is support your point. Go for it. Book text. So Dance with Dragons, John 12. Burning shafts hissed upward, trailing tongues of fire. Scarecrow brothers tumbled down, black cloaks ablaze. Snow and Eagle cried as foemen scuttled up the ice like spiders. John was armored in black ice, but his blade burned red in his fist. As the dead men reached the wall, atop of the wall, he sent them down to die again. He slew a graybeard and a beardless boy, a giant, a gaunt man with filed teeth, a girl with thick red hair. Too late he recognized Ygritte. She was gone as quick as she'd appeared. So this is John's Azor Ahai dream. I've quoted it in at least 10 different episodes. All of my, this is basically a drinking game, a drink when I quote this passage. So the point is, you just said a minute that our hero's got to be an ice and fire person. Well, here's John, armored in black ice, which sounds almost like an other, because the others wear ice armor. But black ice is a little different. And then he's got a blade, a black sword that burns red. So he's got ice and fire. The black ice, to me, is a clue about dragon glass, which is frozen fire and looks like black ice. And then Ned's sword is made of Valyrian steel. It's called ice, but it's black. So that's black ice too. So you've got Valyrian steel and dragon glass, two things that are like black ice. They both kill the others. John's got black ice armor and a red sword. So he's ice and fire. He's still meant to kill the others, but he's got some iciness to him too. So he's got this synthesis of ice and fire. And that's kind of like just what you were talking about. And in this dream where he's got the burning red sword, not only is he defending the wall like a last hero figure, that line about him killing Ygritte makes this an Azor Ahai reenactment, because he's killing his love with a burning sword. That's the Lightbringer myth. Azor Ahai stabbing Nissa Nissa with Lightbringer. And so that's put in there to show you that this is John becoming Azor Ahai, but he's doing so with ice armor because he's a Stark and he's half of the North and all the rest. So I just think that's really cool. Totally supports what you were saying. But let's talk about Bran and the Cauldron, unless you have something you'd like to add to that.
Nothing at all, and I hate it when we agree, but yeah, that was all excellent stuff. So let's go to Bran and the Cauldron.
So I'm going to just read this from Wikipedia because it's the best summary. It's really short, and I don't know well enough to make a better summary off the top of my head. So this is from the Mabinogion. Mabinogion. Everybody can now pile on for my horrible pronunciation of Irish words. The Irish king, Malthawich, sails to Harlech to speak with Bran the Blessed, High King of the Island of the Mighty, and to ask for the hand of his sister Branwen in marriage, thus forging an alliance between the two islands. Oh my God, these words are horrible. Bendigidfren agrees to Malthawich's request, but the celebrations are cut short when Efnisian, Efnisian, a half-brother to the children of Lear, brutally mutilates Malthawich's horses, angry that his permission was not sought in regard to the marriage. So basically, you've got a half-brother who's upset about who his sister is being betrothed to. That's the long and short of it. Malthawich is deeply offended until Bran offers him compensation in the form of a magic cauldron that can restore the dead to life. Pleased with the gift, Malthawich and Branwen sail back to Ireland to reign. Once in Malthawich's kingdom, Branwen gives birth to a son, Gwern, but Elfniasin's insult continues to rankle amongst the Irish, and eventually Branwen is mistreated, banished to the kitchen, and beaten every day. So this is Bran's sister, who's married the King of Ireland, gone off to Ireland, and now she's being mistreated because Bran, because of this insult of the betrothal or some bullshit. It doesn't really matter, actually. But so she tames a starling and sends it across the Irish Sea with a message to her brother, who sails from Wales to Ireland to rescue her with his brother, Manduin, and a huge host of warriors mustered from the 154 cantrefs of Britain. The Irish offer to make peace and build a house big enough to entertain Ben Giedfren, but hang 100 bags inside, supposedly containing flour, but actually containing armed warriors. Efnisian, suspecting treachery, reconnoiters the hall and kills the warriors by crushing their skulls. Later at the feast, Efnisian, again feeling insulted, murders Gwern by burning him alive. And as a result, a vicious battle breaks out. Seeing that the Irish are using the cauldron to revive the dead, he hides amongst the Irish corpses and is thrown into the cauldron by the unwitting enemy. He destroys the cauldron from within, sacrificing himself in the process. So then it says only 7 men survive the conflict. And let's see. The survivors are told by a mortally wounded Bran to cut off his head and return it to Britain. For 7 years, the 7 survivors stay in Harlech, but when they are entertained by Bran, they're entertained by Bran's head, which continues to speak. They later move on to Gwales, where they live for 80 years without perceiving the passing of time. Eventually, somebody... Let me skip ahead, blah, 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 blah. And I think they end up burying the head, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
So here's this story about Bran the Blessed, all right? And there's a couple important things. The cauldron that revives the dead is obviously very interesting because it's a Grail type artifact. And raising the dead obviously is all over this story. And Bran is the character who has produced this cauldron. But then later, somebody has to go inside and blow it up from the inside. So the Bran cauldron idea is basically that Bran has to, just like you said, the control has to be returned to humans. And so maybe the Weirwood net needs to be shut down. Maybe human sorcerers aren't meant to handle the fire of the gods, and they aren't meant to be green seers, because that's potentially how the others got created. I think that that's a book thing, by the way. It wasn't the children of the forest creating the others, but human green seers that abused the magic, the green seer magic, and then created others. But it's neither here nor there. The point is, there are some obvious parallels in this myth to A Song of Ice and Fire. And it's not just Bran. If you guys remember the Whispers is that chapter from Brienne when she and Nimbledick Crab are tracking. They're looking for Sansa and they're chasing rumors. And they go down Cracklaw Point. And at the end of Cracklaw Point, which is this swampy peninsula, they get to this old abandoned castle called the Whispers. And at the Whispers, the legend is that there was this king that used to live there, and he collected all the heads of the people he slew. And these heads would talk to him. And so down in a cave under the castle, he supposedly had all these heads there, and they would they would give him advice and stuff, because he would collect the heads of really smart people that he would, you know, kill. And then when Brienne goes there, it turns out to just be the waves, you know, going in and out of the cove that makes a whispering sound that sounds like whispering. But the point is, there's a weirwood at the end of this peninsula. And so George Martin has shown us the idea of a whispering head, just like Bran the Blessed's head, being buried, just like Bran the Blessed's head was buried. It was buried beneath a hill in London, wasn't it? Wasn't that the story?
Yeah, so I think there were a couple of different versions of it. One that it was buried in France, and one it was buried where the Tower of London was finally built.
So the point is, there's some obvious, Martin is planting flags here at the Whispers about the Bran the Blessed myth. He's showing us a lot of it, and he's tying it to a weirwood tree, which makes a ton of sense, because the weirwoods, if let's put it this way, if Night's King was created by the children of the forest or by weirwood magic, then ultimately the power to raise the dead comes from weirwood magic that's been altered or changed. And so the cauldron that raises the dead is the weirwood net. And so you get this idea that maybe Bran is going to go inside the weirwood net and basically blow it up from the inside. That is a theory that is running around out there. I can't say that I thought of it. It's one of those group brainstorm things that comes from Westeros.org. And it's just one of those mythical parallels. But it has a certain amount of appeal because, like you said, you know, all this magic kind of seems like Martin is showing us that it's mostly bad. People do mostly bad things with magical powers. And so it might be a satisfactory ending to see it all kind of shut down. And those trees look like they're in pain, don't they? I mean, they're all got these crying, bloody faces. The green seers are like parasites that are invading their consciousness. You know, maybe they don't like it, right?
Yeah, so I like this theory a lot, I have to say. I think that the idea that all magic must shut down appeals to me quite a lot. I have long been of the view that fire magic has to go in some way, because, you know, we can't have a dragon hanging around in Westeros after everything's finished, after the big
Sure we
battle, whatever it
can.
is. No, we can't, and let's not even like pretend we can. We cannot have a dragon hanging around, because otherwise, the dragon is just gonna like breathe fire on people, and that is not a good thing.
That's fair. That's fair.
We also cannot have the others or the White Walkers hanging around, because, you know, they're gonna do bad things. So both of those forces have to go. The question that I think remains is what happens to the other bit of magic, the bit of magic in the middle, which is the weirwood network. Now, I am very attracted to this idea that Bran's endgame is to bring down that weirwood network. Now, the whole point here is that Bran has to have a purpose in this story. Just taking the narrative as a whole, we've had chapters upon chapters of him learning to be a tree wizard. He has to do something with that power. It's a Chekhov's gun kind of situation. We know that he's suddenly got this huge amounts of power. He has to do something with it. He's not just going to go after like all these 5 books and learn how to be an incredibly powerful wizard and then just die. That's not going to happen. He's going to do something with his powers. Now, the only 2 options he has are, or the story I think has narratively, is for him to be using those powers to end the attack of the others in some way. And I think he will have a role in that, but I think fundamentally that is more a Jon and Dany thing going on. They're the people who are going to be leading that battle. Or he is the person who is going to bring down this third rung of magic, this children of the forest type magic, the weirwoods who have been, through Bloodraven, been manipulating events across Westeros for millennia. and people do not realize all of the influence that they've had, but they have, through people like Bloodraven, been influencing events left, right, and center. And somebody has to stop that or accept that as a fundamental part of what it is to be a human in Westeros. I don't think we can carry on with the idea that there is this hidden bit of magic running things behind the scenes. I want to. That's obviously big picture stuff. I don't want to forget.
Let me just jump on what you said and add a corroboration real quick. You make a great point. Jon and Dany seem well equipped to deal with the others. So what is Bran going to do? There's a possibility that Bran might help raise Jon from the dead in the books. I do think that's a possibility. You could see Bran at least talking to Jon's spirit when Jon is inside Ghost, and maybe Jon visits the crypts. His spirit might, dream and see visions. Bran could definitely contact him during that time and maybe help him decide to wake up, or some pivotal thing like that. And I've seen people in the chat ask about Bran raising the dead, because it's kind of, speaking of Chekhov's guns, it's like the Children of the Forest specifically warned Bran, oh, don't try to call your dad back from the dead. Whatever you do, don't try to do that, because you can't do that. It's impossible. And it's like, well, why would they warn him not to try it if it was impossible? So it's definitely set up that Bran could try to raise the dead. And again, Bran the Blessed had the cauldron that rose, that made the dead wake. So that's all a possibility. But yeah, it's appealing, the idea that he's got some other higher purpose than just raising Jon. And Jon and Dany seem destined to fight the others. That's why I liked this live stream when you pitched it to me, because the question of what Bran is supposed to do is definitely a little more wide open. It should be amazing and it should be magical, but there's so many ways it could go. And I've got a couple more quotes, by the way, to support the Bran warging a dragon.
I thought we'd killed that idea, but go for it. Why not?
Oh, not by any means. Not by any means, my friend. Let's see here. My favorite one, actually, let's start with the white bat. Okay, so this is from A Dance with Dragons. The dragons craned their necks around, gazing at them with burning eyes. This is under the Pyramid of Meereen, by the way. The Sarion had shattered one chain and melted the others. That's cool. He clung to the roof of the pit like some huge white bat, his claws dug deep into the burnt and crumbling bricks. So a huge white bat. That's interesting. A Dance with Dragons, Bran. Bran ate with Summer and his pack as a wolf. As a raven, he flew with the murder, circling the hill at sunset, watching for foes, feeling the icy touch of the air. As Hodor, he explored the caves. He found chambers full of bones, shafts that plunged deep into the earth, a place where the skeletons of gigantic bats hung upside down from the ceiling. He even crossed the slender stone bridge that arched over the abyss, and discovered more passages and chambers on the far side. One was full of singers, enthroned like Brynden in nests of weirwood roots that wove under and through and around their bodies. Most of them looked dead to him, but as he crossed in front of them, their eyes would open and follow the light of his torch, and one of them opened and closed a wrinkled mouth as if he were trying to speak. Hodor, Bran said to him, and he felt the real Hodor stir down in his pit. So there's a couple things going on with this quote. Obviously, the first comparison is just the bats. Clearly, those bat skeletons in Bloodraven's cave are actually dragon skeletons. And this is evidence that Greenseers have always skin changed dragons. So that's the first point. I mean, that's beyond debate. So you don't really need to comment on that.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to comment in a moment. Carry on.
The other cool thing is actually not necessarily related directly to dragons, but to our overall conversation. So look at this line where he's crossing the abyss. This is a very interesting line. He crossed the slender stone bridge that arched over the abyss and discovered more passages. So it's this idea that like Bran is crossing the void and going where nobody's gone before somewhere and discovering things. I think it's a layered meaning in that sentence there. So go ahead. You can respond to that.
Okay, so I mean, I love the quote, and the quote is a great quote, but I don't think there's any foreshadowing there in terms of things looking like bats is not, for me, an implication that Bran will warg into a dragon. Yes, bats look a bit like dragons in that they've got leathery wings. The fact that Bran, whilst warging into Hodor, saw something that looked a bit like something that looks a bit like a dragon, to me is just about 3 looks a bit likes too far away from actual foreshadowing. But carry on.
Okay. Fair enough. It's like an appetizer, just getting you warmed up here. So,
Okay, so hit me with the real one then. Go on.
Okay, so the gargoyles on the Winterfell first keep. These gargoyles are symbolically very important. They're interesting because the only castles in all of Westeros that have gargoyles are Dragonstone and Winterfell, and weirdly Coldmoat from the Duncan Egg story. But the cool thing is that at Winterfell, the gargoyles are so old and worn down you can't tell what they are. So it's ambiguous as to what they are. But on Dragonstone, they're wyverns and hellhounds, and dragons, obviously, and probably other beasts. But the inclusion of hellhounds is interesting because when you picture the gargoyles of Winterfell, it seems like hellhounds might be good. But in any case, these gargoyles are interesting. So there's a couple of quotes around them. And yeah, I'll just read them. To a boy, Winterfell was a gray stone labyrinth of walls and towers and courtyards and tunnels, spreading out in all directions. In the older parts of the castle, the halls slanted up and down, so you couldn't even be sure what floor you were on. The place had grown over the centuries like some monstrous stone tree, Maester Lewin told him once, and its branches were gnarled and thick and twisted, its roots sunk deep into the earth. When he got out from under it and scrambled up near the sky, Bran could see all of Winterfell at a glance. He liked the way it looked, spread out beneath him, only birds wheeling over his head, while all of the life of the castle went on below. Bran could perch for hours among the shapeless, rain-worn gargoyles that brooded over the first keep, watching it all. The men drilling with the wood and steel, bloody. So Bran is perched amongst the gargoyles, almost like he's one of the gargoyles, and he's watching everything like the gargoyles. So that's the first point. The second point is when he climbs up to the fateful confrontation with Jaime and Cersei, and Jaime pushes him out of the tower. This is a really important scene, not just because Bran gets crippled and this begins the awakening of his Greenseer power, but because the act of him climbing the tower is actually a symbol of someone climbing up to the heavens to obtain the fire of the gods. Are you familiar with this general argument, Robert? Have you heard me do this spiel?
I have, but do carry on.
Okay, so the point is when Bran is climbing the tower, he's told about a story about the bad little boy who was struck by lightning. And this is a story that Old Nan tells him in an effort to get him not to climb the towers. And the story goes that the bad little boy climbed too high and he was struck by lightning and he fell down and the crows ate out his eyes. Now, the thing is that lightning is a symbol of the fire of the gods coming down to man. And it's in world mythology, and George uses it in his Grey King myth when he says that Grey King taunted the storm god who lashed down with a great thunderbolt, setting a tree ablaze. And this is how the Grey King possessed the fire for mankind. So it's a Prometheus story about bringing fire to the earth, and the fire specifically takes the form of a thunderbolt, a lightning bolt. So Bran, I don't think I have to explain the fact that the fire of the gods means mankind possessing godlike powers. And the best example of that in the story is the Greenseer magic. Bran is the Greenseer. So he is literally someone who is obtaining the fire of the gods. And it happens when he climbs this tower. So even though he's not actually struck by lightning, he's thinking about the bad little boy who's struck by lightning. And that lightning serves as a metaphor for the fire of the gods. And Bran, again, he starts awakening his powers in the coma dream that he goes into after he falls. So when he climbs up, he sees Jaime and Cersei. And Jaime and Cersei are having a conversation, which is dangerous for Bran to hear, because the fact that he overhears it results in them having to kill him. And Jaime and Cersei appear godlike in Bran's dream when he's looking up. Jaime appears as a man shining like the sun or something. So Jaime and Cersei's forbidden talk is another depiction of the fire of the gods. So you've got Bran climbing the tower. He's overhearing the talk of the gods that he shouldn't hear. And as a result, he's kicked out of heaven, all right? And here's the scene. When he's doing this scene to obtain the fire of the gods, he's basically climbing on the gargoyles. So think about the gargoyles as dragons and listen to this quote. The best way to start...
Big leap, my friend, a big leap, but carry on.
The best way to start from the godswood, shimmy up the tall sentinel and cross over the armory in the guards' hall, leaping roof to roof, barefoot so the guards wouldn't hear you overhead. That brought you up to the blind side of the first keep, the oldest part of the castle, a squat round fortress that was taller than it looked. Only rats and spiders lived there now, but the old stones still made for good climbing. You could go straight up to where the gargoyles leaned out blindly over empty space and swing from gargoyle to gargoyle, hand over hand, around to the north side. And from there, if you really stretched out, you could reach and pull yourself over to the broken tower, which is broken because it was struck by lightning, by the way, where it leaned close. That last part was the scramble up the blackened stones to the eyrie, no more than 10 feet, and then the crows would come around to see if he brought any corn. He's thinking all of this as he's climbing towards Jaime and Cersei. And it says, Bran was moving from gargoyle to gargoyle with the ease of long practice when he heard the voices. He was so startled he almost lost his grip. The first keep had been empty all his life. Bran pulled himself up, climbed over the gargoyle, crawled out onto the roof. This was the easy way. He moved across the roof to the next gargoyle, right above the window of the room where they were talking. Bran sat astride the gargoyle, tightened his legs around it, and swung himself around, upside down. He hung by his legs and slowly stretched his head down toward the window. The world looked strange upside down. The courtyard swam dizzily below him, its stones still wet with melted snow. So he's riding the gargoyle. He's looking down at the world. He's obtaining the fire of the gods at this moment. And here's the clinch. And I mentioned, obviously, that some gargoyles are dragons at Dragonstone. Here, we don't know what they are. But he dreams about the gargoyles and listen to how they sound. In his dream, he was climbing again, pulling himself up an ancient windowless tower, his fingers forcing themselves between blackened stones, his feet scrabbling for purchase. Higher and higher he climbed through the clouds and into the night sky, climbing into the night sky. And still the tower rose before him. When he paused to look down, his head swam dizzily and he felt his fingers slipping. Bran cried out and clung for dear life. The earth was 1,000 miles beneath him, and he could not fly. He could not fly. He waited until his heart had stopped pounding, until he could breathe, and he began to climb again. There was no way to go but up. Far above him, outlined against a vast pale moon, he thought he could see the shapes of gargoyles. His arms were sore and aching, but he dared not rest. He forced himself to climb faster. The gargoyles watched him ascend. Their eyes glowed red as hot coals in a brazier. Perhaps once they had been lions, but now they were twisted and grotesque. Bran could hear them whispering to each other in soft stone voices, terrible to hear. He must not listen, he told himself, because that's the forbidden knowledge. He must not hear. So long as he did not hear them, he was safe. But when the gargoyles pulled themselves loose from the stone and padded down the side of the tower to where Bran clung, he knew he was not safe after all. I didn't hear, he wept as they came closer and closer. I didn't. He woke gasping, lost in darkness, and saw a vast shadow looming over him. I didn't hear, he whispered, trembling in fear, but the shadow said, Hodor, and lit the candle by the bedside, and Bran sighed with relief. So, we've got fiery gargoyles, and they're coming down from the moon. I'm sure you noticed that, okay? And they are literally speaking with the forbidden knowledge. And you can see this forbidden knowledge theme really strong. Bran knows he's safe as long as he doesn't hear it. But once he hears, he knows he's not safe. So these gargoyles definitely, to me, work as dragon symbols, and they work as a symbol of something bearing the fire of the gods. And Bran, like I said, was riding them over empty space, and now in the dream, he's 1,000 miles over the world. So with that, I'll give it to you. Finally, something you can disagree with, but there it is.
Well, I'm very happy to disagree with that. I will tell you why I disagree with it in just one moment. I just have to say thank you to the Suki Bapsawent for 10 euros. Thank you so much, saying, hi guys, June here, just saying thanks for all your amazing work. Thank you so much. That's very kind. in terms of disagreeing with you, so many levels. The first I think I have to say is that yes, I love that chapter. The forbidden knowledge there is the knowledge of what he saw, and I think that is very clear through what comes through in the later visions. Is that the crow pecks out the knowledge of what he saw? So that is the thing, the forbidden knowledge. The fiery eyes. It's not that they were fiery. It's the gargoyles' eyes were fiery, so they were red eyes, and they padded down to him. Now, if this was a dragon imagery, in my mind, I think we would not see them padding. What pads? It's wolves. So I think what we're actually seeing here is wolf imagery. I think we are seeing the first bit of him, the imagery of crows flying, if anything. That bit didn't cover it so much, but there is when he's climbing, he is climbing there because he wants to be alone with the crows. He carries corn in his pocket in order to feed the crows. And when he has these visions, it is a crow that comes to him. This is for me, it's a vision about crows. There is nothing there, as far as I'm concerned, about dragons. I mean,
I'm so glad you said that, because one of the things that Bran sees in that vision is dragons beneath the sunrise in a shy, and he sees it right before he sees the last thing in his vision, which is Jon in the wall. Jon, who's a dragon, and the others who dragons have to fight. But there's definitely nothing about dragons in that chapter. Now, I do agree with you. No, you just got to take that, dude. I just owned you. You just got to let it burn and let it marinate. You misspoke. I got you. There are dragons in that chapter, but let's address what you the first thing that you said, because you compared. You said
no. We're not going to just let that one lie. So there are not dragons in that chapter. There is no mention of dragons. There is no mention of dragon wings. There is no mention of beasts flying in the air. There is nothing about dragons. So the dragon imagery is not there. I accept that it could be slightly murky and you can interpret it in different ways. I get that, but
well, it's in the chapter. It's in the chapter where he has the dream recall of the climbing the tower. That's the one where he has all the visions around the world, where he sees the wall and he sees the heart of winter and he sees dragons under the sunrise. So that's the chapter I was talking about. But I'm just, I'm just playing with you anyways.
I do, and now you're talking about a different chapter, which I'm calling you out on that one. So you're
these two chapters are linked. These two chapters are linked. This is one chapter is when he climbs the tower and falls. The other chapter is when he wakes up from his coma dream while dreaming about the climb. So I would say that they're both related, and they both have the gargoyles. And those were the two chapters of the quotes that I just pulled. So I'm talking about those two together. But that's that aside. You made a good point.
That's fair enough. I would argue that neither of them are about dragons.
Well, dragons are in the one chapter. I mean, he sees dragons, and gargoyles are sometimes dragons. But you mentioned that they pad down the side of the tower, right?
Gargoyles are sometimes monkeys, and this isn't a chapter about monkeys.
No, it's not. They'd be fiery monkeys at the least, which would be pretty good. Because it'd be like Tyrion the demon monkey, who's also a gargoyle. So actually, you're on the right track there. So but please, Robert, please. I'm trying to successfully interrupt you and respond to your point. You're not letting me do my thing.
You go and do your thing. That's successfully is open to debate, but you do your thing.
Okay. So you said that they pad down the side of the thing, right? Which makes them wolves, right? Hellhounds, you have to say, like fiery wolves, because they've got burning eyes like molten magma or whatever it was, right?
Well, I'm not saying exactly what they are, but I'm saying if they were dragons, the word pad would not be.
Okay. No, I'm agreeing with you.
That whatever we would say about dragons moving, there is never the word padding. That they might fly, they might scratch their way down, they might do many things, but they would not pad their way down.
Okay, I agree. I agree that the thing that would make the most sense is if they were hellhounds, because we know that gargoyles can be hellhounds, and the symbolism of the direwolves is drawn directly from Cerberus. You are aware of Cerberus and all that, right?
I am aware of Cerberus.
Okay, so Cerberus is an interesting thing. Cerberus, for those of you who may not know, is a three-headed hellhound. He guards the entrance to the underworld. That's what he does. And he's a fiery-eyed, three-headed hellhound. So what George has done is he's taken Cerberus and he's created two things from it. One is the hellhound direwolf of Stark, which guards the underworld in the crypts, just like Cerberus. And the other one is the three-headed Targaryen dragon, which we also find in crypt-like places like the dungeon underneath King's Landing. And so basically the three-headed dragon of Targaryen, the direwolf of Stark, are both mythological children of Cerberus. And I covered this in my last podcast. There's a lot of detail that goes into that. But the hellhound symbolism that's all over Winterfell is basically joined at the hip with dragon symbolism. And that is why when Bran comes out of the crypts and Winterfell is burned, he sees the image of a fiery snake flying overhead, which I don't believe is a real dragon, but it is dragon symbolism. And it's right there at Winterfell. And then it says when they walked out of the crypts and pushed open that door, it says they made enough noise to wake a dragon. So there's a lot of dragon symbolism at Winterfell, and there's a lot of hellhound symbolism at Winterfell. And they're basically all related because it comes from the same mythology. So when we have these gargoyles that have fiery eyes, they're coming down from the moon with the forbidden knowledge of the gods, and Bran is riding them, it could be taken as dragon riding foreshadowing. Now, again, I don't think that that's something that's going to happen. I'm just presenting this as the potential foreshadowing if it happens. That's all I'm willing to say about it.
Okay, well, I have many comebacks on this one, but I think I'm just going to start bringing this one to a close. Guys, we're going to, in 10 minutes, we're going to wrap up. Yen said $2. Thank you so much. Saying, I'm going to go broke. Joking. Love this discussion. Thank you so much. And Cap the Goat, $19.99. Thank you. This is a great exchange. Great job. I think we'll try and bring this one back to Bran, which is what we were trying to talk about originally. And I want to get back to the first super chat we had, which was a long time ago, which was from Stephen S. Will Book Bran ever leave the cave? And I think this is a really good question. So, LML, why don't you answer this one? Will Book Bran ever actually leave that cave?
I used to think no. But the fact that Showbran left the cave makes me think that Book Bran will too. That's the simple answer. However, somebody in the chat said, I'm disagreeing. Gargoyles have nothing to do with dragons. Au contraire. The legend of the first gargoyle is actually a dragon legend. What happened was there was a dragon menacing a town, and the hero cut off the head of the dragon and hung it on the corner of the church where it turned to stone. And the purpose of it was to frighten off other dragons. So the first gargoyle was a dragon. Oink.
Fair enough. So your answer
I'm ready to go on this, man.
No. You suddenly got pithy. I wasn't expecting it. In terms of whether Bran is going to leave, can I put the point to you that he might, in the books, go by some kind of weird subterranean weirwood network underground to come up into Winterfell, rather than the sort of the overground thing that he did?
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. I was reading the chat. Restate the question?
No. So on the show, Bran, obviously, he left and he went overground, and Mira was dragging him hundreds of miles all the way past the wall down to Winterfell. Do you think in the books he might go by some underground weirwood network route and suddenly come up perhaps through the crypts into Winterfell?
Well, that would be a long way. However, if something like that happened, even like part of it, if part of it was underground, he passed the wall underground, or went underground at Long Lake and came up in the crypts. It would mirror the Silver Chair, one of the Chronicles of Narnia. You familiar with that one? So in that one, there's a hero that he takes a long journey over land, ends up underground, and comes back home through the caverns and pops back up at home in the garden. And it's a pretty iconic thing and a pretty iconic concept. And there's obviously a bunch of theories running around of Gwendolen Gorn and all that stuff. So yeah, it's possible. And also I find it far-fetched that Mira's going to drag Bran on a sled back home when it was so hard for them to get there, even with cold hands helping them. Something's got to change, right?
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think that for me, the most likely way that they're going to do this, I'm a subscriber to the idea that the Weirwood network is more underground than it is overground. And all of the Weirwood trees are connected through their root systems. And in Winterfell, it's described, if you go back to the first few chapters of the first book, Winterfell, the walls are described almost like vein-like, as if the walls are actually part of the Weirwood network. So there are roots through the out of the curtain wall that Bran crawls through that are not just man-made walls. They seem to be like veins going through. And I think that is very much part of the Weirwood network. And I think the reason why Weirwoods do not survive the other side of big bits of water is because they can't connect up to the big network. And so I wonder whether Bran might actually, his way back south of the wall might be through that, maybe some kind of subterranean river through the network. But that's like,
that would be cool. That would be fucking awesome, man.
It would be cool. I mean, I've not got any foreshadowing for that, but I just think it works for me.
Well, there is that underground river in Bloodraven's cave, and honestly, like, one of the things I'm looking forward to the most in the last two books, Robert, is to see how George writes some of the higher fantasy things that we know are going to happen. We don't know which ones he's going to do, but we can see that magic is escalating. We know that there's going to be a magical climax to this story, but we know that Martin has such a knack for portraying all these things in a gritty, realistic way. I would like to see him write that, the underground river or the underground journey. I'd like to see how he handles it.
Yeah, absolutely. And to link up to a super chat, Harrison Grand Williams, thank you so much, $5. Wouldn't Hodor have to hold the door in the books? Yes. So what George R. R. Martin has said about this is that yes, that is the same idea, and his end is going to be the same end, but it's going to happen slightly differently. So he will hold the door. It won't be, by implication, the outside door of the Bloodraven's cave, in order to allow Mira to pull Bran away. So perhaps it's going to be a different door. It's going to be a door that holding back, if we're going down this completely tinfoily theoretical route, that it's the door to the underground network that he is holding back. But it is a door somewhere, but it's not going to be the same door.
So there's actually a specific foreshadowing that is related to the crypts. Listen to this. Turning, Hodor put his back against the wood and shoved. Again. Hodor! He put one foot on a higher step, so he was bent under the slant of the door and tried to rise. This time the wood groaned and creaked. Hodor! The other foot came up a step, and Hodor spread his legs apart, braced and straightened. His face turned red, and Bran could see cords in his neck bulging as he strained against the weight above him. Hodor, 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 Hodor! From above came a dull rumble. Then suddenly the door jerked upward and a shaft of daylight fell across Bran's face, blinding him for a moment. Another shove brought the sound of shifting stone, and then the way was open. Osha poked her spear through and slid out after it, and Rickon squirmed through Mira's legs. Hodor shoved the door open all the way and stepped to the surface. The reeds had to carry Bran up the last few steps. So then it says, the sky was a pale gray, the smoke eddied all around them. They stood in the shadow of the first keep, or what remained of it. One whole side of the building had torn loose and fallen away. Stone and shattered gargoyles lay strewn across the yard. They fell just where I did, Bran thought when he saw them. Some of the gargoyles had broken into so many pieces it made him wonder how he was alive at all. Nearby, some crows were pecking at a body crushed beneath the tumbled stone, but he lay face down, and Bran could not say who he was. So this is a lot of things going on here. Of course, you caught the parallel between the gargoyles and Bran, which is another, you can see what I'm pointing at there. I won't go into it, but there it is. And there's the crows pecking at the other body that's fallen there is a shout out to the legend of the bad little boy who climbed the tower, got struck by lightning, and then had his eyes pecked out by crows. But the Hodor foreshadowing, you can see Martin giving us a hold the door clue by him saying Hodor, 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 Hodor over and over. Because if you read it like that, you can start to hear hold the door. And he's doing it as he's trying to open a door. But maybe next time he'll be holding it shut or a different door in the crypts. And then the last observation about this scene is that there is a lot of Bran rebirth symbolism or a Stark rebirth. You see Rickon squirmed through Mira's legs as if he was a baby coming out of Mira's vagina. And then there's the Reeds had to carry Bran up the last few steps as if he was a baby. So there's this Stark rebirth symbolism. And this, by the way, that sound of the door opening, that is the sound that a paragraph later they say, we made noise enough to wake a dragon when we opened that door. So there's Stark rebirth symbolism, dragon waking symbolism, Hodor holding the door. So there you go.
Well, I'm not going to pick up on the dragon symbolism because I think that'll take us down a whole rabbit hole again. But Stephen Stark, thank you so much for the super chat. Really enjoyed the Bob and Dave show. When is round 2? I think this actually is round 2. If you missed it, we did do a live stream before. I think about the Long Night and the Winterfell crypts. It's on my channel if you want to go check it out. As I said right at the start of it, it's the most watched and most liked live stream that I've ever done. So please do go check that one out. I'm gonna wrap this one up. I have a feeling with LML I could talk to him all day, and we could just like go to and fro with our random theories about different things all day. If you've got any last Q&A, just drop them down there in the chat. We'll try and pick up 1 or 2 more just before we end. But before we do, LML, where can people find you? On the internet, where are you?
If you type the words Lucifer means Lightbringer into the Google box, you will find all of my stuff and a couple of links that you shouldn't click on, as I always tell people. I have my YouTube page is Lucifer Means Lightbringer. My website is Lucifer Means Lightbringer. I have a blog and podcast that mirror each other, so you can either read it or listen to it, either way. And then I also do a bunch of live streams and other things on my YouTube channel. The thing that I will promote this Sunday, 3 o'clock Eastern, I'm going to have my second episode of a new show that I just started called Between Two Weirwoods. And it's basically my live discussion panel show where I invite a bunch of smart people onto my show and we kick around a topic that is not related to mythical astronomy symbolism. So it can be anything at all. And I try not to interrupt people too much and usually fail at that. And to mixed results. And that's the show. It's Between Two Weirwoods. This Sunday, I've got a bunch of people that I really shouldn't interrupt. So hopefully pray for me, Robert, that I'm my self-restraint is dialed up because I've got 3 really smart women on my show. I've got Chloe and Eliana from Girls Gone Canon, and I've got Amanda from The Disputed Lands. And the topic is going to be parenting, or more specifically, the way that George Martin uses child-parent relationships to create interesting characters. We're going to contrast Ned and Tywin, for example, as father figures. We're going to take a look at the way that their children have all been heavily influenced by the very different style of parenting that Ned and Tywin apply. And I think this is something that Martin's thought a lot about in the way that Jaime and Cersei and Tyrion do everything. I mean, they think about their parents all the time in their head. So it's pretty fruitful ground. we'll probably move on to Kat and Cersei, talk about Doran Martell, but come join us on the Lucifer Means Lightbringer YouTube channel this Sunday, 3 o'clock Eastern, for Between Two Weirwoods #2, featuring Chloe, Eliana, and Crowfood's daughter. And with that, I will say thank you, Robert, for having me on. It's always fun. Hope I didn't get too fired up there right in the middle, but it was a good conversation. I always enjoy it. So, thanks for having me on, and thanks to everyone in the chat.
Yeah, always a pleasure. I'm delighted to see that you've got your side project there on Between Two Weirwoods, and really amused by the fact that you're inviting very smart people, as you say, onto it, and I've yet to get my invite. So yeah, whenever you're ready, mate. That's.
What do you mean? What do you mean you haven't gotten your invite? I sent a raven across the pond like last week. Something must have happened to it. I mean, that's Atlantic Ocean's pretty big. It's ravens get tired. I'll send another.
I would say check out LML's channel. Anything he does is both smart and interesting. So do go check that one out.
Well, in all seriousness, Robert, one of the reasons why I started this is because I have a lot of people like yourself that I really want to have on my channel, but most of my live streams are within the context of mythical astronomy symbolism. And most other podcasters don't have the time to listen to every podcast of every other podcaster. And so most people aren't up on my episodes, and it makes it hard for me to have people on my show. And so one of the whole things about Between Two Weirwoods is I can have anybody on, talk about anything. So guys, of course, you will be seeing Robert on a Between Two Weirwoods episode very soon. And I'll be sure to mix it up and get some interesting folks on there, so we have a nice dynamic going. So it'll happen for sure.
I was teasing. Thank you, Alma. And now, actually, we are another super chat. Mazamonti, £5. Thank you so much. That's very generous. Guys, I've really enjoyed this. LML, thank you so much. You are one of my favorite people in the entire community, not just because you're a really nice guy, but because you come at things with intelligence and an analytical approach that I really value, and we're definitely. Somebody was asking in the chat, when's round 2? This was round 2. We've had round 1 already. Round 3 will happen. I'm definitely going to have LML on again. He's one of my favorite people to just exchange ideas with. But guys, in terms of my stuff, you already know it. My new channel is launching very, very soon. The Well Told Tale. Please do go check that out. If you're a supporter of the channel already, and if you want to get access to more of my material, please do check out my Patreon page. That's patreon.com/InDeepGeek. But that's it for me for now. We'll be coming at you with a whole new load of videos. I'm going to double down on A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones stuff for the next few months. So please do keep an eye out for all of that. Thank you so much for the chat. Thank you particularly for the super chats. Thank you to LML for coming on. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you, and I'll see you again really soon. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.